Welcome to Creating Wealth with Jason Hartman. During this program, Jason is going to tell you some really exciting things that you probably haven't thought of before, and a new slant on investing. Fresh new approaches to America's best investment that will enable you to create more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine, self-made multi-millionaire who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. He's been a successful investor for 20 years and currently owns properties in 11 states and 17 cities. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to financial freedom. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Hey, welcome to another edition of the Creating Wealth Show. This is Jason Hartman, where we talk about creating wealth through the most historically proven wealth creator, income properties. Yes, income properties in diverse markets, purchased correctly, at or below the cost of actual construction, can make you very, very wealthy. Make sure you check out a whole bunch of our new properties at jasonhartman.com/properties. We have a lot of new inventory in Dallas that you might find particularly interesting. That is a new relationship, a new vendor that we just brought on board who is doing some excellent rehab properties. I was out to visit them a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned before, and I think you'll really like what they have. There's some good product there, and we will have them on the show very soon. I actually recorded an interview with them when I was in Dallas, and we will air that very soon. Today we're going to interview Thomas Sowell, the author of Basic Economics and many other books. We're talking to him today mostly about his latest book, The Housing Boom and Bust, and Thomas Sowell is a consummate academic. I used to read him in Forbes magazine years ago and really always liked what he had to say. He was very reasonable and logical and interesting and did a great interview for us. Before we get to the interview, though, I want to mention that the Creating Wealth event on the day before my birthday, October 3rd, I just had to throw that in there, is going to be canceled. We are probably not going to do the Creating Wealth seminar anymore. What we've decided is that it's just not long enough, and we need a bigger event, a more robust event. So we're probably going to turn that into sort of a boot camp, if you will. More to come on this. But our big event, which is only twice a year, is coming up, and you must attend this one. It is the Masters Weekend, very special event where we have guest speakers flying in from all over the country on many different aspects of investing, asset protection, etc. Here's a little info about it right now. Good morning, everyone.
There's never been a better chance to learn what you need to know to achieve financial independence, and it happens over the course of 2 powerhouse days, every spring and every fall, with a panel of 16 vibrant, intellectually motivated, and, I'll say it, slightly obsessed with real estate experts leading the way. There's a good chance you'll be sad to see it end.
This is the Masters Weekend, a gathering of experts, where we fly in experts from all over the country. We have guests here today from as far away as North Carolina and Colorado, and then we have experts flying in from many states all over the USA.
Probably the most interesting thing that I've learned so far is about the 1031 exchanges. I thought that was an excellent presentation, answered questions I didn't really even know I had.
And yes, we are planning to invest with Platinum Properties, and probably in the Go Zone, but perhaps not exclusively. And we were greatly impressed today with the surroundings and the glamour and the style, but also the information.
And Karam and Sarah and all the folks here at Platinum have helped us tremendously. So I think we're on the road to success.
Don't wait to buy real estate, and then wait.
The Masters Weekend is a twice-yearly special event, so don't wait another 6 months to learn the skills that could make you financially independent. Space is limited, so your immediate registration guarantees a seat in the room at Platinum Properties Investor Network with Jason Hartman and our gathering of experts.
So as you can see, the Masters Weekend has been a highly acclaimed event, and you must join us for it. It is a fantastic event. We had a comment also on our prior show about green hell, and I just wanted to mention it to you because one of our listeners who said that he very much enjoys the show, but didn't really like that one that much because he thought it was a little bit unrelated and lacks specificity to some extent. And a couple things I want to say about that. Number one, I appreciate the comment. Number two is that on the show, when I interview these guests and I talk to them, we don't have time to go into a whole bunch of detail. We're talking many times on a kind of a conceptual level, as you've noticed, especially about a topic this broad as environmental policy and so forth. But I really want to mention this to you with these fires that we're having today in California. And as I was thinking about it today, I went to bed last night, and this huge, huge fire that's burnt, I guess, about 42,000 acres, just in the time I was sleeping, doubled in size to where it's about 85,000 acres now. And that was when I woke up this morning. Hopefully they've gotten a little more under control now, but who knows? I haven't listened to the news all day. And part of the reason, and I'm not saying that's the reason for this fire, but many fires have occurred because of environmental policy, because of green hell. And that was the name of the author, the book that I interviewed Steve Malloy on the last show. And the cost of these kind of radical environmental policies are in every aspect of our lives. They influence the price of gas that we pay at the pump. They influence these wildfires that are happening constantly in California and in other places around the nation and around the world. One of the reasons I remember years ago, one of the big fires we had where I had to evacuate my own house. At the time I lived in Irvine in an area called Turtle Rock and had to evacuate. And part of the reason that fire occurred is because the environmental movement would not let people clear brush. And the reason they wouldn't let people clear brush, which is the fuel for these fires, is because it would disturb the habitat of some little rodent or some bug or something like that. And I'm not saying this is all bad, everybody. I'm taking a middle ground on it. But you must understand that most of the stuff we hear seems like this harmless, kind-hearted kind of thing. And it really is not always couched with the best agenda. One of the comments on my Facebook page after airing the show I thought was really applicable. It was Dave Toombs, our broker here at Platinum Properties Investor Network, made a comment, something to the effect of, in the dying days of the Soviet Union, when they were looking for a way to keep things under control, there was a movement within the Soviet Union, an environmental movement. And they were thinking that they could exert a lot of policy and a lot of control over people through the green movement. And another saying came out of that, saying that green trees have red roots. Okay, red meaning communism or socialism. So I just really encourage you to, whenever people talk about the environmental movement, to really, really think beyond what is on the surface. There's a lot more to it than that. It affects real estate, it affects your financial life, and it is related to creating wealth, okay? One of the things you're going to hear on this show is when Thomas Sowell and I discuss how people in wealthy neighborhoods, and that's true in my own neighborhood right here in Orange County, in Irvine and Newport Coast and these beautiful kind of upper end areas, they use environmentalism as a way to exclude people. They use it as a way to keep people out. You know, it's kind of like that concept of, we used to have these bumper stickers you'd see in California back in the 80s that said, "Welcome to California, now go home." And it's kind of like that old riddle that I say in my Creating Wealth seminar. What do you call a developer? Someone who wants to build a house in the woods, or someone who wants to build a house at the beach? What do you call an environmentalist? Someone who already has a house in the woods or at the beach. Okay? And there's a lot more to this than I think most people think about, and that's why I wanted to do that show, because I just want you to see both sides of that issue. And Thomas Sowell discusses that, how in Northern California, they use this as a way to exclude people from living in their areas. You'll hear him talk about it here. So let's go to the interview with Thomas Sowell. Enough of my pontificating. I apologize if you don't like that, but occasionally I just want to bring it to your attention. Thomas Sowell, as I said before, is the consummate academic. He has taught economics at Cornell, UCLA, Amherst, and other highly acclaimed academic institutions. And his Basic Economics book has been translated into 6 languages. He is currently a scholar in residence at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. He is published in both academic journals in such popular media as the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, and Fortune, and writes a syndicated column that appears in newspapers across the country. So here's the interview with Thomas Sowell. It's my pleasure to welcome Thomas Sowell to the show. He is the author of The Housing Boom and Bust, just listed on the New York Times expanded bestseller list. Thomas, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your perspective. It looks like from the book you are saying that both parties are to blame, so this is a pretty bipartisan effort, it sounds like.
Yes, in fact, I've often said long before this crash that things that are bipartisan are usually twice as bad as things that are partisan.
Uh-huh.
The Democrats did take the lead in this, but the Republicans contributed too much to it for them to try to blame Democrats alone. The fundamental problem with all of this is it's a very complicated story when you get into all the derivatives and Wall Street and this and that. But the fundamental problem is that the money that financed all the fancy Wall Street derivatives and so on all came from people, millions of people, paying their monthly mortgage bills. And when that monthly mortgage money started not coming in, when people started being delinquent and defaulting on their loans, then it really didn't matter what the clever people in Wall Street were doing. If the money wasn't coming in, it just wasn't coming in. So the real question is, why was there suddenly all of this delinquency and default in the mortgage market? And the answer to that is that banks and others were pressured into lending to people who did not meet the standards that had been in use for decades. You know, things like the 20% down payment and verified income and so on. And under pressure from the government, and more than pressure, there were actual quotas set up for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
Now, when you talk about that pressure, are you referring to the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act?
Yes, but not by itself, because that act was passed in 1977, and it really didn't do an awful lot until the 1990s. And what happened then was that people began to use that act as the criterion for deciding whether the regulators would allow banks to make business decisions of a sort that unregulated businesses make all the time. For example, if a bank wants to acquire another bank, or a bank wants to go into some other sell securities, for example, as the later law is allowed, then only those banks whose lending practices and other practices under the Community Reinvestment Act met the government approval would then be approved to make acquisitions, mergers, and other kinds of transactions.
These banks were under an enormous amount of pressure, would you say, to make bad loans for political correctness reasons?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, for example, there are a number of banks who were accused of discrimination. They were accused. They were not proven anything. And on that basis alone, the regulators could simply hold up any decision that they had until the legal case was disposed of. Well, as you can imagine, running a business where you're not allowed to make the decisions that your competitors are making until such time as a legal case is settled, which can be years, and which in some cases can be more than a decade, obviously is a crippling power. And so you cave.
It's just amazing to me how people throw around words like racism. You know, I was talking about this on my show, just saying that, you know, look, these banks made such imprudent loans. And someone sent me a question saying, you know, well, I don't want to think you're being racist by saying that certain people didn't deserve to own a home. And I'm thinking, like, that is the most ridiculous statement. Why would you even ask me such a question? The determination should be whether or not you can afford the property and whether or not you have good character in making payments in your past. I mean...
Yes. Well, of course, it seems so obvious that you wonder why people don't see it. But many don't, and the media do very little to clarify the situation. Once the accusation is made, it's tantamount to conviction.
Right.
And many of the studies that have been done, I've looked at the studies in some detail, and if you were serious, you wouldn't convict somebody of jaywalking on the basis of this kind of evidence.
Right.